Hello guys, this is Planets again. I'm back for another episode, and no, I've not forgotten about this blog, but the curse activity has been up the roof. It was the Southern War, and once the Southern War has more or less finished, it's the new hero coalition deploying in Zendaya near Curse. So, well, all the free time I can get in my real life, I spend it trying to kill people. I hope you guys can understand once again. As for today's episode, it's going to be dedicated to Gatecamp BUSTING. Hell yeah! So I'm also just gonna say this, everybody hates gate camps. If you're roaming around and you jump your solo ship into a gate camp, you're probably gonna die. That's bad. On the other hand, if you're gate camping yourself, you have to wait countless hours for something to jump into you. And when it does, it's something like a noob ship or a ship with a Sino. That's bad also. First of all, in order to bust a gate camp, you need to know it. And intel, just as always, is your best friend. Once you have your intel on the gate camp you wanna bust, you need to see how you can exploit their weaknesses. Actually, a proper gate camp will be very hard to bust and will have probably no ships worth killing, and you will just not be able to surprise them unless you bring a Sino. Fortunately, most people don't really know how to put up a proper gate camp, and you can use that to your advantage. Here are some of the main characteristics of a gate camp worth busting. If a gate camp has some of these elements, they will probably be vulnerable, and they might be worth rounding up a fleet and baiting them and try to kill some of them. Remember, you always need the proper tool. In this particular example, we had an Ares, an interceptor, camping a gate for like 10 minutes, trying to catch small ships. In order to bust this gate camp, if you want to call it this way, I decided to bring a Helios and bait him out, see if he would go for me. In order to bust a gate camp, you need to kill somebody from that set gate camp. Just shoving people away, it's very easy, just show up with superior force. What you really need is, well, lots of baiting and see how you can kill some of them. By killing some of the people on that gate camp, you will break their morale, and they will just go away for at least a couple hours. On the next example, we got a sniping tornado waiting for small ships to land on his bubbles, and then he can snipe them. Once again, the proper tool for this was a cloaky bomber that slow boated to him. I did not even need to use probes, it was just sitting zero for ages and ages and ages, and that was his undoing, really. And once I got a proper position with the bomber, I warped in planners, my other tune, in a RP, and scrammed the tornado. Using a bomber on this situation is actually very crucial, because bombers do not have targeting delays. They don't have that 5 seconds delay before targeting, so they are extremely good at surprising ships that even are lining out. I've already showed this on a previous episode, but right now it's from the bomber's perspective, and for surprise effects like this one, bombers work better than covert ops or cloaky recons. The next situation was not recorded by me, it was recorded by Warhead Rex, and the funny thing is that they had scouted our fleet, so in order to get themselves safe, they just decided to warp off to pings instead of just warping off to station or something like that. I also noticed that the Gnosis was at 0 meters per second, so I played the same tactic. I brought out the cloaky bomber, probed the Gnosis, tackled it, and jumped in the fleet. Unfortunately, not everything went 100% in this situation, because the Gnosis fought back, and it managed to kill my cloaky bomber. That is one of the downsides of using such a frigate to tackle a Battlecruiser. So it was really not a flawless victory, but oh well, still worth the trade-off. Still, the funny thing that happens on these gate camps when people don't really know what to do or why to act is that things go crazy on comms. And as soon as the Gnosis died, stuff started to come in. We managed to get Rail Brutix warping in 0 on us. Of course, the Brutix should not have warped at 0 if it was rail fitted. But the important factor here is that we managed to kill 2 ships, even though they knew what we had, even though we did lost our cloaky bomber. Next situation, a gate camp with some small tacklers, and I would not even care about this gate camp if it was only frigates, but there is an Ishtar on the edge of a bubble off the gate moving 0 meters per speed. It's just begging to be killed. So we pretty much formed the fleet and, well, tried to get them. Once again, I got warping with a cloaky near the Ishtar, and as soon as I landed, I rushed towards the shiny ship in the fleet. So overload micro drive, scram, web, and once it is tackled, it's time to call in the fleet. Local spike. Let's go for it. I only have to survive until my fleet arrives, but with a dual-plated mauler, it's really not gonna be all that hard. Right now, I only have to wait for my fleet and hope not to get jammed, although I had eyes on these fellas for some time. I did not saw any sort of ECM on their part. My fleet is landing in their bubble, the Ares is still also pretty close. And then they bring backup. A curse lands on the edge of the bubble. I try to micro drive towards the curse, but for some reason my micro drive does not activate, even though I click it 2 times, and the curse immediately starts making range. So if I had any opportunity of catching it real on the start of the fight, I had, well, lost it. Dual-plated maulers are not known by their mobility. And we pretty much focus on mopping up everything we can catch near the bubble. What was odd about these fellas was that they decided to reship and try to engage us. So they brought out an Abaddon and a Dominix, and not only that, they also managed to get a warping on Kaloon on an exec. They had probes set on the gate, and they tried to catch him. Fortunately, Kaloon managed to bail away and get safe by warping off to another ping. By pure chance, I was nearby, and I tried once again to try to get a scram on that curse, but I was really slow and he managed to keep his distance. I was hoping that if I managed to put that small Nosferatu on top of the curse, I would manage to get a scram on him, and my fellas would be able to kill him at that point. But well, we would just have to go for another target. So instead, even though I was pretty new to that, I just decided to try to approach one of the battleships, call in my mates for backup, activate my scram. My guns were completely well shut down, and my 2 other mates on DPS ships would have to make the best they could. Not long after, they also bring a rapier, and this actually becomes a bit mixed. I mean, they have 2 brawling ships in the form of battleships, and they have 2 kiting ships in the form of the rapier and the curse. Well, even though we try to primer the curse, we cannot hold it down, so you can see some damage there, but it's really not going all that well. So we had to switch targets to one of the battleships that were indeed scrammed. Well, as you can imagine, with battleships on the field, the match continued to proceed on a sluggish fashion, without any real changes from any of the sides, until this part. After some time, the curse managed to position himself in order to nuke both our lodges. You can see clearly here the effects coming from the curse, and you can see the nuke effects on those 2 ships, and those 2 ships are our 2 executors. Both our lodges are nuked, and this can be the turning point for them. Um, Fortunately, with a bit of luck on the mix, one of our lodges managed to slow boat away from the neuting power from the curse, and thus reestablishing the wrapping power that we so much needed. Also, we deployed some drones on the curse to make some pressure on top of him and try to destabilize him and try to to save our our logistics as better as we could at this point. This is also a perfect example on why on A4D we actually never use a logi anchor. Basically, we just tell our guys to go fly around within wrapping range, and we hardly keep our lodges very close to each other. We just make sure that they can wrap themselves, but that's it. The slugfest continued for some more time, but after this point they were unable to change the tide of the fight. We also got some couple mates that came from home base, knowing that we had this fight. The old engagement lasted for more than 15 minutes, so quite a lot really. And it's also worth noticing that the Dominics dropped really fast comparing to the Abaddon. So the Abaddon calling the Abaddon primary was a mistake, but oh well. Uh, at the same time, some RVB battleships start jumping into Doral. Now, we do not really have eyes on the other side of the gate, and yeah, that's probably two battleships were already hard to kill, let alone 5 or 6. But RVB never runs around with 5 or 6 guys, so we just decided to warp off and see what developed. In less than 30 seconds, local filled up to 100, so yeah. So okay, for the next Gatecamp bust, my ship of choice was a dual-plated ECCM Prophecy. That's one of the largest tanks you can use on a battlecruiser, and the ECCM is very useful just in case our foes have ECM drones or even just regular ECM ships, so it allows to grab something before they all run away. So okay, I jump into these fellows. We already had eyes on them. You can see the purple fella there in local. He's our eyes on top of them. So the plan is very simple. They have eyes inside Hammond, so I cannot just jump in the fleet or they will just scatter. And I take a bit, okay. They've bubbled up, they're completely unaware that I have backup ready to go. Okay, I burn back to the gate. I also always try to burn back to the gate, and they start locking me up and aggressing me. Good. At this point, it's time to call in backup. So I call in the fellas that were 2 jumps out, they jump into Hammond, and now I have to wait for them to reach Jorans, so I have to stay alive for some time. Unfortunately, not everything goes always to plan. You can see up there a very simple schematic, and what basically happened was that the flycatcher jumped out. He burned off the gate towards where my backup was going to arrive, and he bubbled up. As a consequence, my backup was trapped on a drag bubble or a stop bubble, whatever you want to call it, like 50k off the gate, unable to jump into the gate camp and unable to wrap me up. So yeah, poof. So okay, it's time to ask yourself what went wrong here. And what went wrong was that we pulled the same trick with these fellas for about 3 times. And it was due over time for it to fail, because we just kept doing the same thing. We did have a small variation. You can see Stinky there, the guy in local that is in my fleet. He was actually also on a tackle Proteus, so he was able to tackle the Hurricane and the Drake. The fleet was eventually able to burn to the gate and jump in, and we still killed like 2 of them. Risk-wise, we killed more than we lost, but truthfully, Gatecamp busting wise, it was a real fail because we let them outsmart us by putting a stop bubble. We should have saw this coming, and we should have lost nothing during the procedure of the Gatecamp busting. But oh well. Gatecamp busting is a messy affair, don't think otherwise. That romantic image of somebody jumping into a gate camp, killing them all, and saving the day, well, that's all very funny, but don't expect that to happen many times. Um, it's very easy to miscalculate their behavior. It's very hard to sometimes to guess if they're gonna have backup or not. And in this particular example, that it's me and some other fellow. We jumped in 4 tunes. We're dual tabbing, trying to break the initial gate camp, but soon after we realized that they're getting a bit more backup than we expected. They've got EOS, Falcons, even Sins. I never saw anybody use Sins for gate camps, or well, I don't recall the last time I saw a Sin, but they brought a couple for this situation. Anyway, don't let a small detail like ramming into a wall demotivate you from trying to bust any more gate camps. You will die. A lot. Especially if you play bait. But it's funny as hell. A small variation from gate camp busting is station camp busting. Usually people on stations get a bit too cocky because they have numbers, they have carriers, they have ships that they can quickly ship, and people get a bit careless. Nevertheless, station camps are also a good opportunity. Once again, you need to find out where they are more vulnerable and strike there. In this particular case, I was being camped in my other tune at Doral Station, and they formed up a fleet of assault battlecruisers to camp my Rapture that was inside station, and I thought it was a great opportunity to call in backup and grab some kills. So we managed to realize that some assault battlecruisers were trying to snipe away from the station, and once again we took this opportunity to probe them, get a warp in with a bubbler, and bring in the fleet and try to kill the fellas that were off the station. Killing guys at the station would prove definitely harder, and this is a good perspective. Actually, I'm going to pause the video here. By probing out the fellas that were away from the station, we managed to prevent them from getting remote reps. We managed to avoid any sort of carrier backup case they decided to undock, and we managed to snatch 2 or 3 battlecruisers. After this, they pretty much sat on the undock doing nothing, and I, well, decided to undock my other tune and went happily home with 2 more kills in our killboard. For the next situation I did not record anything, but it's very straightforward. This fella was camping a station with the Tempest, and whenever he had any problem he would undock an Archon. Well, it's very hard to kill a battleship with an Archon if you're gonna jump through a gate and then walk to the station 15 AU, and then he will just deaggress and dock up. So we had to devise a plan to kill this fella, and the plan was very simple. We Black Ops hot drop him. I'm not proud of this move, but people that don't undock or don't leave stations with carrier supports also get on my nerves a bit. So, well, I'm not proud, but yeah, this is what we did, and we basically hot dropped this fella. What I'd really like to call your attention to in this situation was the bait ship that I used. I used a Rapture with full Nosferatus in the highs because I knew he was a Newton Tempest, and I also had a regular Sino on my Rapture. Black Ops ships can jump through a normal Sino, and people sometimes forget it. This way, we did not need to deploy an Arazo or a Rapier with covered Sino tops and all that stuff. No, we kept it even more simple. We took a Tech 1 cruiser with a tank, with Nosferatus, Sinoed in a normal Sino, and the Black Ops ships just jumped through. The disadvantage is that my normal Sino has to be sitting there for 10 minutes, and some minutes after a large volition cult or CVA profit block gang jumped in and killed my Sino Rapture still on the station after killing the Tempest. Wrong place, wrong time. Yeah. Okay, finally, last engagement of the episode. Um, we spotted a gate camp at the Doral slash Joran's gate, or interface, or however you want to call it. And we noticed that the fellas were camping with a bunch of crows, with the exception of the juicy target, a vagabond, one single vagabond in the midst of all those crows. I generally don't give much care about gate camps with only frigates, but if you're gonna bring a hack inside that situation, I'm gonna go for it. So we devised a plan to try and catch that vagabond. Um, okay, we took advantage a bit from knowing the area, and Doral has two entries, from Utopia and from Jond. So I went to play bait with my Vexer to Doral. They would see me inside Doral. I jumped into their gate camp onto Jorans, and I would try to grab the Vagabond inside Jorans. At the same time, my backup, coming from Hammond, was also holding at the Joran gate, where the gate campers did not have any sort of eyes inside Hammond at the Joran gate. So I would play bait from one side, and the backup would come from the other side. Long story short. Okay, there we go then. Actually, inside Doral, I went on purpose towards the station. I wanted to make sure that they saw me. I wanted to make sure they saw me, that I was aligning drones, so that they would try to catch me there. Because these fellows were gate camping, but they were smart gate camping. They had all their crews and all their fleet at the pause, and when the scouts gave the heads up that that something was coming to their gate, they would all flock to the gate. So you can see there, they saw me warping to the John cluster, and they're all showing up on short range scan from their pause that they were like staging. Okay, here they come. Vagabond and stilettos and crows and stuff. Okay, it's good. So far it's good. Let's jump in. When I was jumping in, I started to think that they might have a bit too much for my simple Vexer to hold, so I had to think quick, and I adopted a somewhat different solution. I asked my fleet to jump before I decloaked. By asking my fleet to jump and work to me before I decloaked, I was hoping to gain precious, valuable seconds for me to survive until my fleet arrived. Of course, this was a double-edged sword. At the same time, with local spike, my opponents could have just decided to bail, to scatter, and I would catch absolutely nothing. Once again, the tactic to catch the Vagabond was pretty straightforward. Jump in, decloak, overload my Coop Drive to try and get him as soon as he decloaked, overload Scram, Web, and very important, overload the reactive armor. This gives an incredible boost to armor ships, and the only reason I really survived was because of this mod, and because I have great logi corp mates that always keep me safe. As you can see, I'm running out of cap. I cannot. I'm neutered out. I'm struggling to put a scram on the Vagabond, but my corp mates are already on top of him, so he's not going any place. Unfortunately, we could not really catch anything else. The second Vagabond that actually showed up just burned away too soon. The fact that there were bubbles on the gate kind of messed up our opportunity to catch stuff, because my fleet landed a bit further away than would be the optimal. but overall this was one of my favorite Gatecamp busts because we had a somewhat complex plan. Everything went according to expected. I survived in almost structure. Everybody did their job great, and it was really exhilarating. Okay, guys, this is all for today. I truly hope that you go out there and try to find gate games to bust instead of just hugging a gate and bubbling up and trying to kill whatever comes through it. Gate camp busting is indeed an activity that brings me lots of joy, lots of adrenaline, and you really need to think it through, especially for you not to die and for to prevent your foes to run away. Well, you get the idea. It's something I really like a lot. I hope you also enjoy it. And also, FunFest is just around the corner in Iceland. So if you do go to FunFest, please make sure you get an opportunity also to go to the Blue Lagoon. And remember, real men don't need shorts. Hell yeah! And chicks really dig a man without shorts, you know. Okay, see you fellas.